before you hit enter, I want to kind of do it old school style so we don't get ahead of ourselves, because I want to actually have to click a submit button before we actually search for something. So here we have now the Google homepage, and I'm going to go ahead and search for something like Harvard. Enter. And voila. Once I hit enter, Harvard, thankfully, is the top hit here. So now we actually see the page of search results. But how did this happen? Well, let's look a little closer. Here's before, obviously the default homepage, and here's the URL. Notice that Chrome is being a little excessively user-friendly. What's really there is this. But for reasons of aesthetics and simplicity, a lot of browsers are just hiding this. But http:// is implicitly there. And now notice when I actually click submit after searching for Harvard, enter, notice that the URL changes to something much, much more complex. But it's all related to what I just did. Let me go ahead and copy this. Let me go ahead and open just a temporary text file and paste this in just so we can see it a little more clearly. And it's definitely an ugly URL, but let's just throw away anything that confuses us. So I have no idea what this is, but it seems like it relates to English. EN is generally the shorthand notation for English. Source, I don't really know what HP is, so I'm going to delete that. BIW, don't know what that is. BIH, maybe heights. Maybe there's a with thing going on here. OK, Q equals Harvard. Sounds familiar. So Q, query, probably. So let's leave that. OQ, I didn't type OQ, so let's get rid of that. No idea what this is. Definitely have no idea what this number is. So Google's doing a lot of stuff, right? They do advertising. That's the technical explanation. So this was like version 1. When Larry and Sergey first made Google, it really did work as simply as this, with one input coming from the user before all this era of advertising and the like, and user tracking. So let's see what happens if I just take this URL, go back to a browser, click enter. So it actually still works. So even sort of old school style, this URL works. And this is nice, because I can kind of wrap my mind around this URL. The other one's a little overwhelming. So notice that by default, the text field is being filled in with the word Harvard. At the top, I have google.com/search Q equals Harvard. So let's tease these things apart. So the domain name here is www.google.com. Slash denotes the root of the hard drive, the server that Google's using. Now, in reality, they have thousands of servers. But let's simplify. One server. And so in that server's hard drive is apparently a file called search. And that file is a program. Maybe it's written in PHP, Python, C, C++. Who knows right now? Though generally, Google does a lot of stuff in Python and other languages. So /search is the program. And it turns out that the convention on the web is anytime you have a question mark, after that question mark are the inputs to the server. So just as in C, you can provide inputs via the command line or by using getString or similar and waiting at a prompt and typing enter. The web works in such a way that servers take input by way of URLs with question marks and then key value pairs after them. So Q is the key. Equal sign separates it from its value, which in this case is Harvard. And if you have multiple ones, they're separated by ampersand. So if I had x equals y and w equals z, we would just separate them by ampersands. And that was, I deleted, recall, a whole bunch of ampersands. So that's how Google's apparently working. But how did the web page lead me to that URL? I didn't click a link. I typed in the word Harvard, hit enter, and then magically this URL changed. So let's go back to Google's homepage and see if we can't make a little bit of sense of it. So I'm going to view page source. And oh my god, this is going to be a lot of stuff to delete, right? So as an aside, especially someone like Google, there's fascinating scalability effects here. If someone at Google so much as hits the space bar once, which creates a single byte of white space, and then everyone in the world proceeds to download that homepage in the day, suppose Google gets 1 billion hits, the mere fact that some programmer hit the space bar means 1 billion extra bytes were sent from Google throughout the whole world. That's a gigabyte just because someone hit the space bar. So one of the things Facebook and Google and all of these big sites do is, again, they minify their code. They throw away white space. They automatically shrink variable names so that it's not readable both for obscurity purposes but also for financial purposes. So let's scroll down. Oh my god, a lot of HTML here. But that's OK. Let me actually go inside of the appliance and use a different browser. Because by default, Firefox, recall, comes with some tools pre-installed. We used one on Monday called Live HTTP Headers, which just let us sniff the traffic going from browser to server and back. But today, I want to use an even more popular tool called Firebug. So Firebug is a free plugin for Firefox. Comes in the appliance, but you can download it for your Mac or PC. And what it allows you to do is actually look inside of web pages a little more neatly. So I'm going to go ahead and again disable instant search because I want the old school behavior. Save preferences. And now I'm inside of the appliance. I'm at google.com. I'm going to right click or control click. And notice once you install Firebug, you have a special menu here that shows up called Inspect Element. I'm going to click this. And what this does is it opens a little window at the bottom of the browser that does a bunch of things. But the most useful is it just cleans everything up. It adds white space. It adds indentation. So as you're trying to learn how websites work, or if you're trying to borrow someone else's design, you can actually see much more neatly in this way. So here we have the doc type declaration. Here's the HTML tag. Here's the head tag. And notice I can even collapse these things just to help stay sane as I'm exploring this. So let's go into the body here. It looks like there is a div tag, an iframe tag, a center tag. I don't know what most of these are yet, but center probably means make this centered. So we keep going, and here's the interesting one today. So websites become dynamic when they actually take user inputs. They have text fields or drop-down menus or checkboxes, all of these very familiar, mundane things. But this is what now makes the web interesting, because the page can change every time I visit it if it has something called a form. So if I scroll down here, apparently there's a tag in HTML called form. It can take a bunch of attributes, one of which is name, one of which is action. Well, action has a value, and the action attribute is defined in HTML documentation as being the URL to which you will be sent upon submitting a form. So skim the manual, that's what it says. So this is sort of a shorthand URL. Because there's no HTTP : the browser is going to assume that /search refers to whatever server got me to this point. It's going to assume the default of google.com. Now there's a bunch of distractions in here, and apparently this is the source of some of those crazy names we saw: input OQ, AQ, AQI, AQL, and so forth. Well, notice that these are all hidden. Firebug is being friendly and trying to gray them out, just to draw my attention to the fact that these are inputs that are there, but Google put them there. They're not things that I can see. But I want to see Q and the form that I'm actually filling out. So it turns out there's a table tag in HTML. There's a table body tag. There's a table row tag. There's a table data tag. And if I keep going in here, notice that, OK, finally something a little more familiar. There's more divs. There's a BR input. But this is interesting. There's an input tag. An input tag that takes a bunch of attributes, one of which is type equals submit. This is what makes it a button that's clickable. Another of which is value. So if you've ever wondered where the label from a button comes from, actually, no one's probably ever wondered that. But now if you want to know, the label on these clickable buttons is coming precisely from this HTML. And that I'm feeling lucky button that's been part of Google's history is right here as well. Now, as an aside, the nice thing about Firebug 2 is that you can actually tinker with a website. I can even say, I can go into the HTML here, and I can say I'm feeling, say, unlucky, enter, and voila, I've changed google.com. But obviously not. I've just changed it locally. But the value here is that I can actually tinker with my websites, with others, just to understand how they work. If you pull up google.com now, it will still say, I'm feeling lucky. So what's the takeaway here? It seems that this is the beginning of a dynamic website that is really a program. It's a form. This is the means by which we're getting input. And now Google's providing the back-end intelligence for searching. So let's see if I can't now leverage this same idea and reinvent this wheel and customize it for my own website. Let me go into gedit here. Let me go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to save this as google.html, enter. I'm going to go ahead and then do a bunch of familiar, actually, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste and then change some things. So I'm going to call this CS50 search. We're going to ditch yesterday's pink background. We're going to get rid of all of this, in fact. So let's just get to the bare bones of a website here. So now we have something pretty minimal. And now I'm going to borrow this new trick. I'm going to say, I like that center tag. That's kind of friendly, so let's do that. And now I'm going to do a form tag. A form needs a name. It actually doesn't need a name, so I'm going to skip that one. But it needs an action. /search. Let me close this tag, form. And then this form has to have a few things. And we didn't look at this one explicitly, but there was another. Input type equals text. And what was its thing? Let's take a look. Back at the HTML, let's do a quick control click or right click. And actually, if you click on specific things, if you right click on the form field and click inspect element, it will jump right to it. So you don't have to futz around trying to find it. So notice this is a pretty big input tag with a lot of attributes apparently. But the only one I care about is here. At the very bottom, one of the attributes is name equals quote unquote Q. So I'm going to steal that same HTML and re-implement it myself. So here we go. Input type equals text. Name equals Q. And I'm not going to give it a value, but I am going to have a button. Input type equals submit. Value equals CS50 search. And let's see where this gets us. I'm going to save it with this pretty minimalist design. I'm going to go, let's see, I want to open this in a browser. So I'm going to go back to the appliances desktop. I'm going to go into my home directory. Actually, no, let's do it via the web browser. So localhost /tilde-j-harvard, google.html. OK. Not quite Google, but I'm on my way, right? So I have a form here with a text box. I have a button CS50 search, but it's not quite Google yet because the button I really wanted on the next line. So what was the trick for fixing this issue yesterday, Monday? So we can do like a BR tag. Let's see. Let's save and reload. OK, so it's not quite as pretty as Google, but let's even add their I'm feeling lucky button. So input type equals, let's say, submit. Value equals I'm feeling lucky. And close quote. Let me reload my browser. OK, it's starting to look like Google. And in fact, if we really want to be ridiculous, if we go to a particular URL here, let me steal from our demos today. CS50 search. Nice. All right, so now I have my own logo. Save image. I'm going to save it as search.gif. I'm going to put it into where? John Harvard's public HTML directory. I'm going to click Save. OK, I'm going to go back to my HTML. I need that image tag. So let me go up here and do img src equals search.gif. I need a line break. So now let's reload my browser. Reload. Not appearing. Why? Yeah, so it might be a permissions issue. So let's check. Let me open a terminal window, and let me go into my public HTML directory. Let me do an ls. Oh, but wait, ls isn't good enough. ls-l for the long listing. And sure enough, there's search.gif, but it means only I have read and write permissions. So the fix for this, recall, was chmod all a plus r, all plus read, search.gif. Enter. Let's go back to the browser. Sometimes you'd see like a broken icon or something like that, but Firefox in Linux apparently just shows it as white. Very nice. So now we're on our way here. So now let me go ahead and search for Harvard and see if I'm done implementing Google. OK. So not found. So obviously, I'm cutting some corners, among which is I didn't implement search, right? I didn't implement a program in PHP or any language called search. OK, that's fine. I'm pushing up against the deadline here. psets due, http www.google.com/search. So let's go back here. Reload. You got to reload your HTML, otherwise the change won't take effect. Now I got Harvard, CS50 search. Nice. I have re-implemented Google. All right. So clearly we've cut some corners. So now let's see how we could start implementing things underneath the hood there. Let me go over to gedit here. This is all HTML. Feels like it's going to be time to introduce a bit of PHP. So PHP is now an actual programming language. It's a language that's going to be executed server-side, not inside the browser. So anything we do with PHP is never going to be seen by the user. But using the equivalent of printf, we can write PHP code that spits out HTML, that spits out CSS, and we can dynamically create our web pages. So let me actually go ahead and download some of today's code. Let me go back to lectures. Let me scroll down here, source code, and let me download. Actually, let's do this. I feel like people are getting